This story comes from Flitwick in Bedfordshire, the Ridgeway. I met this next witness over coffee in the nearby market town of Ampthill, in a small and crowded coffee shop over hot chocolate and crumpets. It seemed slightly incongruous to be talking about ghosts in such a mundane setting, but then again, so many paranormal encounters do take place in otherwise utterly mundane settings. So perhaps it was fitting. Our witness, a well-spoken lady who had brought with her a helpful folder of photographs of the house, explained to me that she and her husband had bought the house in the short street called the Ridgeway in Flitwick as newlyweds, with the intention of making it their first family home. It was the 1970s, and they had moved from their first home, a flat, into this wonderfully spacious old house, most of which had been built in the 1860s. Originally, it would have been a typical double-fronted house with the entry door in the middle of the front facade, flanked by spacious windows into probably a lounge and drawing room. It had a basement area as well. At the time when it was built, it would actually have stood in the small hamlet of Dennell End, which has long since been forgotten and subsumed into the small town of Flitwick, and in its day it would have been quite an imposing property for its location, with attendant outbuildings and probably some land where now there are other houses and buildings crowding around. By the time the young couple bought it, the property had been added to numerous times over the years, including a large extension on one side built in the 1920s. It had seen various incarnations over the decades, including a period as a shop during the Second World War. It was in quite a sad state of repair when they made the purchase, and they had high plans of how they would renovate it to turn it into the spacious home they envisaged starting their family in. When they moved in, they were thrilled at how much space they suddenly owned, and decided that this would make it easier to renovate since they could work room by room, thus keeping the mess and clutter associated with the renovation confined to distinct areas whilst they lived in other rooms. They decided to start with one of the beautiful front rooms, stripping it completely bare of all fixtures and fittings, and then strip the walls right back to the original plaster. They were excited to be planning the lovely dining room it would become. They had not been long in the house when the first instance occurred. They had just finished stripping out the front room and had retired for the night to their bedroom, which was directly above the room they were working on. No sooner had they settled into bed, tired from the day's labor, when they were startled back into full wakefulness by the sound of an almighty crash from the room directly below them. Shooting out of bed, the young couple were thoroughly alarmed, wondering what on earth could have toppled over. The sound was as if some heavy item of furniture had fallen. As they hurriedly made their way downstairs to investigate, they both agreed that the sound had definitely seemed to emanate from the room below theirs, the room they had just stripped bare of any and all furniture. They could find nothing disturbed in the bare dining room to be, so in puzzlement they widened their search to the rest of the house, and eventually even outside, where they found the night air still, quiet, and undisturbed by any commotion. They could not think of any explanation for the loud noise which had made them bolt out of bed. Giving up, they retired for the rest of the night and largely forgot about the incident. The next night, our witness was making her way up the stairs intending to head to the bathroom, and had reached as far as the half landing, when she thought she saw a shadow cross the full landing above her and go into one of the bedrooms. Knowing that no one else was upstairs, she tried to rationalize it, assuring herself it must have been a cloud shadow momentarily darkening the windows from outside and causing her to think she had seen a shadow move. But in reality, deep down, she knew that something had just moved in the periphery of her vision. Over the next few weeks, she became increasingly aware that the staircase always felt like it had a presence on it, a presence that was carefully watching her come and go, and which left her feeling slightly uneasy. On more than one occasion, she thought she saw the same shadow moving in the periphery of her vision as she ascended, almost as if someone was deliberately moving out of her line of sight. Eventually, on one particular day, she decided enough was enough and stopped stock still on the half landing. Feeling slightly daft, but at the same time feeling it was the right thing to do, she spoke out loud to what she now felt was a presence they were sharing the house with. She told it that there was nothing for it to be worried about, that although they were making a lot of changes in the house, they were just renovating it so it could become a family home once more, and that they were planning to stay and raise their children there. It seemed to work, because things quieted down after that and there were no more incidents. Time passed, and in due course the young couple had their first child, a son, followed 18 months later by their second child, a daughter. Our witness became a stay-at-home mom, as was very much the norm in those days, and found herself with long hours on her hands and only the children and house to occupy her mind. She relied quite heavily, like most young mums, on a network of ladies in the same position who formed friendships and bonds and worked together to raise the children and help one another out. One such young mum became a particularly close friend, and the pair would often spend time in one another's company. Now, our young couple had often commented on a strange cold spot that was in their lounge, just by the sofa and near the door into the room. It was a distinct column of chilled air, about a foot or so in diameter, and rising from floor to ceiling in a noticeable block, which you could actually feel by passing your hands through it. The column of cold air never wavered or moved, and the young husband had often tried to bring all his logic to bear on it and try to find what the physical cause of it was. Never to any avail. When the friend visited, she commented almost immediately upon this cold spot in the room, confirming that it was a palpable thing and not something the couple were imagining. She then went upstairs to use the bathroom, and when she came back downstairs, tried very delicately to ask about the history of the house and what it had been before, harping on the subject until the owner commented to her, "You've seen something on the stairs, haven't you?" The friend had also noticed the shadow moving, the same as our witness, but when she turned to look fully at it, for a moment she saw a male figure, about 5'6", and seeming to be in his mid-50s or so. He was wearing a soft cap, dark blue trousers, and an old-looking sports jacket. She said that she could not clearly see him. He was sort of smudged out to look at, so she couldn't really describe his features, but he was gone in an instant. The same friend saw him several more times over the years, but never so clearly as that first time. When their son was about 3 years old and a happy, chattering toddler, he had an imaginary friend. His friend was called George, and the young lad would want George to be allowed to have a place setting at the table next to him, or to be allowed to play with him, in the way small children often do in a phase they go through. The couple didn't think much about it, until one Saturday morning when they were trying to have a rare lie-in. Their baby daughter was still asleep in her room, in her crib, and they could hear their young lad happily playing and chattering away to himself in his room. So they snuggled down for just a few moments of undisturbed peace, a commodity prized above all else by most young parents. Their bliss didn't last long, though, because their son came trotting into the room chattering that he wanted George to come and talk with him. Except he was holding his arm up in the air as if holding the hand of an adult man and tugging as if trying to pull the reluctant adult to follow with him. The young husband was utterly horrified at the sight of his baby son apparently conversing with an invisible male adult, and without thinking jumped out of bed, snatched his young son up in his arms, and slammed the bedroom door shut on George, only then realizing his mistake and crying out, "Oh my God, the baby!" His wife was the one who got out of bed and went to calmly retrieve their perfectly happy baby daughter from the crib, but she said her husband remained shaken by the incident for some time, because the idea of the son having an imaginary play friend was one thing, but for that friend to turn out to be an adult male when they knew an adult male ghost had been seen in their house was just too much for him, and not something he's ever really wanted to discuss since. After that incident, they lived there for another 3 years, but George seemed to go away, and the shadows were hardly ever seen, although the cold column in the lounge remained. Their cat continued to react to that throughout the time they lived there, carefully skirting round it and sometimes staring at it and hissing with her fur fluffed up. The very last time anything happened was shortly after they'd put the house on the market and were getting ready to pack up and leave. She caught a glimpse of George one last time on the stairs, looking slightly distressed. It was the clearest she had ever actually seen him, but even then his colors were sort of muted, and again there was the smudging effect, meaning it wasn't like looking clearly at someone, so that her sense of him looking distressed was more of a feeling than something visual. She spoke out loud to him, reassuring him that another family were moving in, and the house would go on, and he would be all right to stay there. She left with the feeling that her words had given the spirit a sense of calm. All right, so that was one story, the very first of our Ruth Roper Wylde stories, and again, I love how much she's managed to capture there.
Yeah, Ruth always manages to pack any sort of encounter. Some of the longer ones in her books are fascinating because of the detail included in them.
Yeah, and what I really love the fact that this happened in a coffee shop, because most of the interviews I did for Strange happened in coffee shops.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to this one woman, and we had, by the end of our conversation, emptied every table around us. Yeah, no one wanted to hear it. I looked up Flitwick to see what other stories there were from around there, and I assume you're aware of the story of Flitwick Manor.
Yes, it's famously because it featured on the British paranormal television show Strange But True in the 90s, which features a rather amusing section on guests being chased out of the hotel by certain ghosts.
Oh, really? I saw that on YouTube, but I didn't have a chance to watch it.
Yeah, some brilliant acting.
90s TV acting? Or, yeah.
Yes, using real people playing themselves and actors.
Oh, man, that's just like that Clint Eastwood movie about the train. I'm sure it went as well.
But yeah, it's a great show. It's one of those lost paranormal shows because it's never been released on DVD or Blu-ray or anything. So
I was going to say that I don't recognize the name at all.
it was massive as well. It was like
Really?
prime time TV, Friday, Saturday nights. They even did a live UFO show at one bit, 4 seasons.
I'll be damned.
Had some brilliant stories, some brilliant witnesses on it. Did an episode on the ghost planes here in Sheffield and Stocksbridge, which is hilarious because they used a local fake psychic as one of the key experts on it. Driving about in a souped-up mini metro.
Oh, boy. Yikes.
Somebody said she's as psychic as a brick, that woman.
Oh, no.
But yes, Flitwick is, notorious.
So notorious, in fact, that I discovered that Higgy Pop had done a recap on an episode of Celebrity Help My House is Haunted.
Well, it's a bit of a stretch to use the word celebrity in regards to that particular person, but yes.
Well, I was going to say because the celebrity, quote, in question was a cast member from Geordie Shore, which was the abomination that you guys responded with after America produced Jersey Shore.
Yeah, they were famously chased out of Sheffield when they tried filming here.
Really?
Yeah, loads of people turned up and started throwing beer all over them. Didn't go down well at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah, get back, get home, you dirty buggers, get out.
I mean, they were right because that show not only was terrible in its own right, but it gave birth to The Only Way is Essex, which is possibly more frightening than anything we've ever talked about on the show.
You're not wrong. We were once having a few drinks at my house, and I said to my mate, "You stay here, buddy. I'm just going to nip to the local off license and get some more beer for us." And I disappeared. And when I came back, he was sat on the settee and he was shaking a bit, and he went, "I don't understand this program. I don't understand it. What is it? Is it real? Is it real?" And it was The Only Way is Essex.
Oh no!
And I went, "Oh man, just turn it off. It's all right. Come on." And he was.
But
he
the
was
damage
okay
is done by
after a
that
drink.
point.
Yeah, and it desensitized him so much. He now works for the CID.
Oh. Wait, so you're going to have to explain that because most of our listeners are not going to understand the reference.
It's a senior division of the police force.
Oh, okay. He's already seen the worst crime perpetrated on the British people, so everything after that's a step down.
Yeah. Being CID in South Yorkshire is easy after that.
That I believe it.
Yeah. He's hunting down fake tan salons and all sorts.
Well, he's lucky one of them didn't crawl out of the TV like the little girl from The Ring.
Well, I'd have probably watched it if it did that.
Oh, man. That's, yeah. No, it's kind of remarkable. Like, I admit, I watched Jersey Shore when it first came out. I watched the first season. I'm not proud of this, but I did. I was in my early 20s, and I was young and dumb. I did a lot of dumb shit back then, Paul. But when I saw The Only Way is Essex, which looked like... I can't even describe it. It looked like animate mummies running around in England. I just felt so bad for the crimes perpetrated upon you by our culture.
Yep. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the granddaddy of them all, which was MTV's. Was it The Real Thing?
Oh, The Real World.
Real World.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the early 90s when they occasionally stopped showing music, and now you'll be shocked to see if they show any music on MTV. It's just not the channel it was. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Much Music in Canada was the same. I think it just... I mean, people still make music videos, I'm shocked to discover, but it's not the way it was. No one's giving Michael Bay millions of dollars to crash airplanes for his music videos anymore.
Well, I'm surprised because there's every major artist makes music videos, but they're all just on YouTube and they get millions and millions and millions of views. So it makes you wonder why a channel has leapt from the thing that made it the international behemoth that it became to basically just put wall-to-wall reality television on that hardly anybody watches.
I genuinely don't know. I think there's probably some kind of cost-saving measure in there, because I know that reality television is cheap. It's cheap to license. It's cheap to make. And people will watch it because people have no taste. I don't know. It's baffling, though, because like you said, there's clearly an appetite for music videos. But I guess maybe because now YouTube exists, so you don't need it. Like I don't know. I go back and forth on that. I go back and forth on whether or not sort of linear programming is ever going to be a thing again, because appointment viewing used to be a thing. You used to sit down and you'd watch. It's Friday, so this is on or that's on, right? And now it just the entertainment ecosystem is so fractured. There's so many different things happening, and you can watch it pretty much whenever. And I can't imagine people ever going back to that. Like you just watch whatever's on, you watch.
Yeah, I've never subscribed to that ever. I always thought that was the most soul-crushing thing ever.
What's that? Just like whatever's on TV is what you watch?
Yeah. I'd just go in a garden and scream for 4 hours. God, no. I think that's where you lose yourself. That's when you discover you're a reader or you love music, because you can just disappear. That's why so many teenagers bugger off into their own bedrooms so they don't have to watch crap.
Yeah, that's fair. But I'm working on this writing project. I've got it that's sort of like set in the 90s. And so I'm watching a lot of 90s TV, and they've got a channel on Pluto that's just 90210, Beverly Hills 90210, the original one. And so I will sit there with my herbal refreshment and my notebook and just watch hours of 90210 on a loop. And it's kind of both magic and insane at the same time. And I just sort of imagine what it would have been like to do this at the time. And I realized, of course, you couldn't have done that at the time, right? Like, because it would have been one episode, maybe two, and then, Blossom or something would have come on. But this is like being in some just hermetically sealed environment that's just pumping television, the same show into your eyes over and over.
Yeah. Primetime Saturday night on ITV, Beverly Hills 90210. You'd have that and Gladiators and Baywatch. And then Michael Barrymore or some other crap. Get me to the pub.
There's no better place to be.